Welcome, adventurers. Today we're trying something a little different. We have a selection of 6 creatures, each plucked from the shelves in reality's dark and dusty cupboards of the bizarre. Now, if that's scratching the creep quarters of your mind, then come, pull up a stool at Creature Tavern. Adventurer! Here for open today. Grab yourself a short rest stool, and while the staff finish setup, allow me to set your noodle full of tales of Akamanto, a yokai from Japanese folklore. Akamanto translates to red cloak in Japanese, but this well-dressed dementor is also known by several supplementary titles, including red cape, red vest, Manto, meaning blue cloak, and to cover all bases, Akai Kami Ao Kami, which translates to red paper, blue paper. Legend of the Akamanto appears to have first reared its red-blue cape in the 1930s. One version of events sends us back to 1935, and we're heading back to elementary school in Osaka. A rumour circulated of a man in a cloak who would appear in a dimly lit bathroom in the basement of the building. Within a few years, the story had migrated to Tokyo, giving rise to tale of the Red Cloak. Another origin points to Akubo, Tokyo, in the early Showa era, where Akamanto was suspected of being a vampire due to the corpses left in areas this mysterious figure was thought to dwell. In some traditions, the legend is even tied to a hairy yokai known as a Kanade, a spirit said to live in toilets and stroke unsuspecting victims, and one will likely cover in a future visit. As for how the cloaked character looks, folks typically describe him as a masked male spirit draped in a long flowing red cloak. The mask conceals his face, though for what reason I'm not sure, as a good few accounts describe him as a handsome and rather charming fella. Perhaps there's more truth in the tales that paint him as a tall man with a sickly, bluish-white face. His authentic self tends to shift from teller to teller. While some say he's a spirit, a ghost, or a yokai, other folks don't buy into the myth at all, claiming he's nothing but a run-of-the-mill serial killer. You'll want to head to Tokyo, though most areas in Greater Japan will do. And once you're there, you'll want to head to public or school bathrooms. Some versions of the legend say he's exclusively haunting female lavatories, but most tellings say he's not bothered one way or the other. His only request is that there's a toilet present. So once you've found a bathroom, head to the furthest stall, or the stall everyone's avoiding, including the custodian of the cloakroom, meaning it's going to look neglected, run down, and in all likelihood, caked in shit. In some stories, it's the 4th stall that's usually the cursed one, as the number 4 is associated with death. Now, before you fire off on a whistle-stop tour of Japan's toilets, you might fancy knowing what you're in for. Legends say Akamanto follow a consistent script. The show starts most often in the late hours of night. You're desperate to use the restroom, forced to enter the toilet avoided by everyone else. That old, unkept bog. Once inside, you'll be able to finish up your business without interruption. You may even reckon Lady Luck must be watching over you, only to realise there ain't any paper. At that instant, a long, tattered, scarlet cloak manifests, and a voice asks a seemingly innocent question. Do you want red paper or blue paper? Now, your response here will determine your fate. If you pick the red paper, you'll be stabbed or sliced so violently that all the blood on your inside will erupt out in a torturous torrent as it covers your outsides entirely. In some versions, instead of a stabbing, you'll just have your skin flayed and left hanging from your back, giving you your own fetching red cloak. And if you think choosing the blue paper makes anything better, where have you been? I've got a little bad news for you. One story says all your blood will be drained, leaving you pale and blue-faced on the john. While other folks say you'll be strangled, until just like the draining, your face turns blue. And the reports don't end there. Many others contain twists on the encounter. In one telling, your skin permanently changes colours to match your choice. In others, there's an actual chance of survival, and we'll get to that case in just a minute. But even with this touch of luck, there's some that say if you manage to survive, you'll suffer terrible illness and die shortly after. Sometimes the punishment goes beyond death itself. Here you'll end up dragged into the netherworld, never to return to our mortal plane. All because you couldn't hold in a piss. Folks also tell me that the question itself comes in a few renditions, changing the paper out for a vest, hand or tongue. Each version preserves the same fatal consequence, mind. One not so deadly but arguably more disturbing version names red and white paper as your pick. In this situation, choosing red causes a red tongue to rise up from the toilets to lick you, while choosing white paper summons a pale hand that emerges to fondle. In far rarer tellings, the options are red and purple. Here, red still leads to death, but purple grants you your escape. So if you don't fancy betting on the purple showing up, but you've had one too many pints, don't fret. Your humble tavern keeper's here with a few tips to help you keep your sacred toilet time safe. First, I wouldn't bother bringing your own paper, as if you do, you'll think you've found the recipe for success. Till your cheeks touch the seat, then that bounty of paper will vanish, as quick as a hen's egg on a fox's birthday. Also, if you try to outsmart an Akamanto by asking for a different coloured toilet paper, cloak, or cape, well, this is where you get dragged to the underworld, or hell, for your cheeky choice. In some stories, yellow paper seems to be the popular choice, but this always results in the occupant's head being forced into the dirty toilet water till they drown. Now what you can do is ignore the spirit completely, or reject both choices. Fables say doing so will cause the Akamanto to leave you be and let you finish your business in peace. You'll just be without paper. In some stories, students have managed to escape by saying, "I don't need any paper." And this seems to buy them enough time to run out the bathroom before anything worse can happen. Just be prepared to run without wiping. And with that, we're finished with our creature for the day. We've learned that if you must use the filthy fourth stall, be prepared to run with shit in your britches. Now that bell means it's last call here at Creature Tavern, so grab yourself one more drink for the road, and until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird. A joyous day it must be. The tap's finally installed. Oh, and you're back. Yes, a pleasure it is. Sorry, I've just had this sticky tap for months. Come, sit. Allow me the honour of reciting word of another creature from the divide of knowledge. Let's go with the Draugr, from Icelandic folklore. Draugr, also called Draugr, is an undead creature, but unlike ghosts, ghouls, or immaterial spirits, The Draugr is a revenant, a reanimated corpse of the deceased that continues to linger in the physical world. Some more recent accounts label them as Norse zombies, though in the sagas they're a lot more than mere mindless husks. They embody malice, greed, and corruption. It was believed that any mean-spirited, nasty, or greedy human could be set to rise as a Draugr after death. From what I've found, the earliest mention of a Draugr comes from Hans Egede, a Danish-Norwegian bishop of Greenland, who described them in his 1741 work, The New Illustration of Greenland. However, their presence in far older Icelandic sagas roots Draugr much earlier in Earth's story. Appearance-wise, think grotesque and horrifying. Folks truly painted a hideous sight to behold. Their flesh is necrotized, and what remains presents as hellpower, that's Icelandic for death blue, narfull, that's corpse pale, og blár sem hell, and digir sem noit, which, if I've pronounced correctly, should mean black as hell and bloated to the size of a bull. There's even some that look rather ordinary. And by that I mean, they just don't have any decay. Picture beef jerky for a good comparison. Often Draugr will be encased in some heavy war gear, an iron-studded helmet, dulled by rust, chainmail, stiff with the centuries of waiting, and leather straps hardened into brittle black bands, indistinguishable from the skin of its owner. The armour is said to cling on the corpse like a second rot, and where spirit and bronze once gleamed, now there's only decay's stain. You'll most likely find a Draugr in an Icelandic burial mound, known as a Haugr. These are canny large mounds of earth and stone placed over the graves of powerful chieftains, warriors, or landowners in the 9th to 11th century, or the Viking Age if you're cool. And lucky for you, many of these burials remain, dotting the Icelandic countryside, often found on elevated ground overlooking farmland or fjords. I'd recommend visiting Þingvellir and heading to Alþingi. That's Iceland's national parliament. And fun fact, it's also the oldest surviving parliament in the world. Another quality spot would be the mound of Þýrithel, near Hvalfjörður. That's a fjord in western Iceland, and it's said to be associated with the restless dead. Your first sign that a soul of the dead might rise as a Draugr occurs even before the burial. If the corpse is found in an upright or sitting position, rather than laying flat, 'tis a warning that the body may not be as at rest as it appears. Once risen, mind, there's no mistaking it. Your scent detection organ will be savaged by the reek of decay. The stench folks say is more foul than any natural rot. Some legends call this odour a weapon, and that alone, it's enough to send you over on your arse and into an early grave. They're also said to wield an array of supernatural abilities, like superhuman strength, and not just enough to perform regular tasks with mucus for muscles. No, this strength goes far beyond that of any ordinary man. So don't be fooled by the bony bits. They can also shapeshift into what it did not tell me, command the weather, and even see into the future. Had one fella tell me, Draugr can enter the dreams of the living, and to prove the encounter, the Draugr would often leave behind a small token for the human they've thoroughly haunted. It's also said Draugr like to curse folks. An example of this can be found in the Grettis saga, where Grettir was cursed to never grow stronger. They could also create temporary spots of darkness in the middle of the day, sink into the dirt to avoid capture or defeat, carry and spread disease through entire villages with very little effort, or kill without lifting a sword. Instead, they'd simply shower their target in buckets of bad luck. So what motivates a Draugr, I hear you ask? Well, a few things do. Greed and envy top amongst them. Greedy in death, as in life you could say. They fiercely guarded their grave's treasure, attacking any would-be pit pirates who dare think the dead are an easy target. Yet beyond material greed, lore says they were also driven by a deep envy of the living, a longing for vitality, and the earthly pleasures they once enjoyed. This envy sometimes expressed itself as an insatiable appetite. Draugr, plagued with this desire, would consume the life essence of any human they could get their spindly little fingers on, turning them into more Draugr. In this way, Draugr were by some placed in the ranks of vampire. And if you're a pet lover, you're not going to like this, as it's told that Draugr's malice extends beyond humans. They're known to target animals, often devastating any livestock they stumble into. Folk say they'll ride an animal to exhaustion and keep pushing till they rest on death's doorstep. Or they'll chase them in a half-flayed form. It's said to be so terrifying, it drives the beasts mad with fear. Even proximity to a Draugr's grave can cause harm. Animals feeding nearby will be struck with madness or death. And in the saga of Thorolith the Draugr, it was said that the birds flying over his burial mound would drop dead. Possibly from the smell, or some unexplainable otherworldly force. Bet you didn't expect a zombie to be a dreamwalker now, did you? Well, don't worry. They may be more fearsome than first thought, but they've got weaknesses like everyone else. Let's get into a few. To rid yourself of a Draugr, you just need to do one simple thing. Destroy the reanimated corpse. Though some Draugr are known to be immune to all weapons, and that only a hero has the true strength and courage to stand up to one. I reckon you'll fit that bill easy. But it ain't always as easy as chopping them down. Some lore states the real way to vanquish a Draugr is to wrestle one back to their grave. And for this, I'd recommend using an iron weapon, as they're vulnerable to the mineral. Though on its own, it will not kill the risen. Some legends go a little further, saying you must dispose of the body in unconventional ways. The popular method here is to cut off the Draugr's head, burn the body, and dump the ashes in the sea. Or how's about instead of surviving an encounter, you avoid one entirely? Draugr are said to be most active during the night, and from what I've read, their presence is marked by the glow of certain vegetation and fungus, like the foxfire fungi. So watch out for a glow on the trail. However, I should mention that Draugr have no aversion to light, so an encounter in the day isn't off the cards. Now these have all been very handy tips if I do say so myself, but what if there's no Draugr in sight, instead of freshly made corpse that's starting to look a little sus? Well, I've found a rather old Icelandic ritual to help with a situation just like that. First, take a pair of iron scissors, open them, and place them on the chest of the recently deceased. Hide straw or twigs among their clothes, tie their big toes together, or drive needles to the soles of their feet to keep the dead from being able to walk. This tradition also held that the coffin should be lifted and lowered in 3 directions as it's carried, to mess up the possible Draugr's sense of direction. And with that, we're finished with our creature for the day. We've learned that you're best sharing a little of your coin lest you return from death's embrace with superpowers. Which, honestly, doesn't sound too bad. Now that bell means it's last call here at Creature Tavern. So grab yourself one more drink for the road. And until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird. Well, rap me knees and call me Phantom of the Grove. It's you, adventurer. I was certain you'd never make it back from that last questionable quest. Come, sit. This calls for a tale. Let's have the one about the Nuckelavee from Scottish folklore. The Nuckelavee, also goes by Nuckelavee, means Devil of the Sea, and it's said the locals don't dare speak its name without uttering a prayer after. This abomination hails from the Orkney Isles, way up north. The islanders say it's the nastiest of all the demons of Scotland's Northern Isles. Are you ready to know its face, adventurer? Let's start with the base. Legends say it's a horse, but not like any you've seen hitched out front. This one's got fins fixed to each leg, and it's stripped bare of any tuft of hair and every inch of skin. Just raw, exposed muscle and pale sinew. If you're brave, or maybe enough pints in to get close enough, you'll see every tendon flex and quiver on this pulsating mass. What you won't need to get close up to see are the great thick yellow veins that snake across the Nuckelavee's frame, pumping black blood like tar across a fleshy canvas. And the horse's head. Well, the old fables say it possesses an enormous, gaping maw, and just the one eye, just that one burning red eye, right in the centre. Then up from the beast's back, right where a rider ought to be, there's the torso of a man, or at least what used to be a man. Much like his steed, he ain't got skin, just meat. And folks that have crossed paths with the beastie always mention its arms, far longer than any humans, dangling low enough to drag along the ground as it moves. But in my opinion, the most unnerving feature is its head. No, not the horse's head, the human's. It's far too big, bulbous and swollen, said to gently rock back and forth like a flayed jack-in-the-box. And in some tales, this head has the protruding mouth of, you guessed it, a pig. Some folks tend to liken the Nuckelavee to a centaur. I suppose they're trying to fit this equine horror into a reality they can wrap their heads around. But pay no mind to these naysayers. If you ever see one of these creatures in the wild, there ain't no mistaking it. So you got all that tucked away, adventurer? Can you picture the beast? Well, what if I told you the Nuckelavee only bears that flayed, fleshless form when it walks the land? Aye, once it slips beneath the waves, it takes another form entirely. But no one I spoke with, nor record I found, could shed any light on this aquatic, mysterious shape. So if that hasn't turned you off, or maybe it's turned you on to wanting to go hunt the Nuckelavee, then its favourite haunt is the sea around the Northern Isles of Scotland. Here it swims beneath the black waves, far from prying eyes. But from what the old lore tells, it seems you'll most often find one near beaches or shorelines, although they've been known to wander further inland. So if you're on a lovely beach walk, and the air suddenly grows thick with the scent of brine and seaweed, then adventurer, you best keep your hand on your hilt, and your wit sharper than that blade, for you never know. Could be one's already dragged itself ashore. So other than shifting forms between water and land, what else can the Nuckelavee do? Well, here's where the tale gets even more interesting. Had a few farmers swing by the tavern the other day. Some of them even had a run-in with the Nuckelavee, would you believe? They said its head exudes a toxic vapour that ain't too friendly to crops. turned their field into a wilting yellow mass before the sun had got its slippers on. Some had livestock too, and trust me, this unnatural gas didn't sit well with them either. Eyes clouded, foam dripping from their mouths, and staring off into the void. Left the poor soul sick beyond fixing. The Nuckelavee really doesn't like farmers. Many of the books I've found say it's responsible for unnaturally long droughts. And I can't stress enough just how much this creature despises humans. Unless it's a little peckish. Then it'll take great joy in feasting on any and all humans caught in its path. Now I can tell from the look in your eye, you're thinking the Nuckelavee must have at least some love for the horses. Well, my hope-filled adventurer, you'd be wrong. It curses them too. Any horse that becomes target of this skinless steed is stricken with a wasting sickness known as morasheen, a blackening rot that eats them alive, from the hooves up. Only way to eat a horse, I say. And this thing spreads like wildfire. One horse keels over, then 5, then 10, and before you know it, the whole stable's silent. Now looking at you, I assume you're familiar with kelp ash. Sure you are. Used to make soap, glass, that sort of stuff. Well, the people of these northern isles produce quite a bit. And to create it, you got to burn a lot of seaweed. But the stench, the stench. Turns out that smoke drives the Nuckelavee mad. And not in the way you'd like. Once the smoke's on the wind, that beast starts charging. Literally nothing infuriates this horseman more than this odour. It's sometimes said that in its rage, the Nuckelavee unleashes a wild rampage of plague, spreading across the land like a flood, drowning all it encounters. So if you travel to take you to the Orkney Isles, tread carefully, because the Nuckelavee bears naught but ill will for any human soul it crosses paths with. Right then, adventurer. You best keep this next part in that sharp head of yours. It could be the difference between walking away or not. So if you happen to be in Nuckelavee territory, it's best if it's raining. If it's raining, you're in luck. Seems the Nuckelavee got no taste for the downpour. Can you strange, eh? Loves the sea, but can't stand a bit of rain. Never once has it been spotted coming ashore while the skies are open. And in a similar vein, this human horse horror's got no stomach for fresh water. So if its hooves are at your heels, make for the nearest stream. Crossing the river will throw it off. Even a good splash of fresh water has been said to buy just enough time for you to leg it. And lastly, come summer, you and the greater folks of Orkney can sleep a little easier. At least from this demon. Legend says the Nuckelavee locked away, tight, by the Mythro of the Sea, an ancient Akkadian spirit, and the only entity able to rein in this monstrous steed. And with that, we're finished with our creature for the day. We've learned that unless you want all your plants dead, never let a horse cough in your garden. Now that bell means it's last call here at Creature Tavern, so grab yourself one more drink for the road, and until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird. Adventurer, you couldn't have timed that any better. We've just took the stool tops out the fire. Come, warm your bones, as I warm your brains, with another tale from the uncertain plane of inexistence. How's about one of Babayaga, from Slavic Folklore? Babayaga, also known as the Slavic crone, is one of 3 sisters sharing the same name. The first written mention of her appears in Mikhail V. Lomonosov's Russian grammar book, in 1755. She is commonly painted as a hag or crone, though in some traditions she appears as a benevolent old woman who aids the heroes of the land. Scholars who've stopped by for a pint or two suggest she may be a Slavic counterpart of the Greek goddess Persephone, connecting her to spring, nature, the elements, and the cycles of life and death. And this hints at her origins as a more divine figure, rather than the witch she's most frequently seen as today. For her name, linguistically, Baba means grandmother or old woman. In Serbo-Croatian, Macedonian, Romanian, and Bulgarian, while in modern Polish and Russian, it can also carry pejorative connotations for a woman that's old, dirty, or foolish. No one seems to know what the Yaga part means. Some scholars explored the possibilities of it meaning anger, horror, legendary evil female, witch, disease, and exploit, among many others, but a direct translation has never been confirmed. Babayaga is widely recognised for her grotesque and unsettling set of physical features. She's said to have dishevelled hair, an incredibly long, hooked nose, so long in fact, it's said she could reach the ceiling of our hut with it when lying down. Long bony fingers, skeletal frail limbs, iron, or by some, tusked teeth, and rather hairy hands. Her body also features what folks, not me, folks, describe as a few repulsive elements, such as her breasts, buttocks, and lower region. And when not talked of in this repulsively hideous motion, she's said to come across deceptively human-like, emphasizing the role she plays as both threatening and liminal. Perhaps the most iconic element is her mobile home, or hut to be exact. Typically standing on two enormous chicken legs, roughly 2 stories high, though some accounts substitute this foul feature for a parade of equally unusual alternatives, including goat legs, iron stilts, spider legs, roots, or skeletal human legs. And there's rarer stories still that depict her hut with hands, claws, a tail, or most disturbingly, more than 2 legs. Now that you know to look out for a pair of giant animal legs, let's talk more about the hut itself. It'd be mighty embarrassing if you tracked down a walking hut, only to find it wasn't the Baba Yaga's. Lore says the hut's a small wooden house, often appearing like a typical Russian izba, that's log cabin, complete with thatched or shingled roof, a lovely little crooked chimney, and small glowing windows that give off a faint, warming hue. But unlike regular huts that match this calm country description, the Baba Yaga's goes a little sideways. You see, it's said that surrounding the hut is a fence made entirely of sharpened human bones with skulls at the top, often with a missing post reserved for her next victim. And at night, well, the skulls glow with a lovely blue or green flame illuminating her grim perimeter. The walls are also said to be adorned with carvings of skulls, bones, ruins and charms to give the place that homely supernatural feel. The doors and gates are sometimes said to be crafted from human skin, framed with bones, locked and bolted with human teeth and jawbones, and of course hinged with skeletal arms. Oh, and that quaint cottage-style thatched roof. Well, by some stories, That's said to be human hair. Yeah, it sounds kind of terrifying. But if it helps keep the heat in, I might just have to ask where she gets the hair from. Babayaga holds strong ties with the forests and woods, so you'll find this towering cottage-core nightmare wandering deep in areas that fit this description. The taiga forests of Russia, Polish and Belarusian woodlands, the Carpathian mountains that range across Ukraine, Slovakia and southern Poland, the Ural mountain forests, and the Czech and Slavic dark woods are all good places to start. So make sure you mark them on your map. There was one other location said to house the Babayaga, but you'll not find it on any map. Some say she dwells in faraway Sardom, an unidentified realm of East Slavic folklore. Lore says, beyond the thrice 9 kingdoms, in the 13th realm, beyond the fiery river, lives the Babayaga. Now, regardless of which territory you decide to visit, she won't be easily found. Her hut's in constant motion, so prepare yourself for a long trek. Much like her appearance, her behaviour shifts through a few different settings, oscillating between a ruthless predator, cunning trickster, and at times, a reluctant guide. Those who seek her out often do so for her immense wisdom, but any encounter with her results in a surprise test of survival, willpower, and cunning. She's a man-eater, or more accurately, a child-eater, notorious for stealing, cooking, and gobbling up her victims. Her favourite's children, but she's also partial to those who trespass in her domain, or show disrespect to her in any way. And that appetite is legendary. Heard from folks that say she enjoys frying her victims before consumption. Seems old Stinker ain't the only one with a favourite way to prepare his human meat. If you're unfortunate, I'm not sure which, but to have a meeting with Babayaga, it's rarely straightforward. Entry into her hut, if granted, and we'll get to that, initiates a series of grueling trials that blend physical tasks with what can only be described as psychological warfare. These trials include cleaning her hut, sorting heaps of grain mixed with dirt, weaving linen, fetching water from a deadly source, bringing fire without being burned, caring for her definitely not dangerous animals and magical garden, or answering riddles about fate, courage, or magic. And each one of these tasks must be complete in a single night. As you can guess, her cruelty lies in the impossible nature of these tasks. She fully expects you to fail these trials, and it isn't always as simple as a house chore. Sometimes, she's said to force her visitors into confronting their deepest, darkest fears. Others, you're tasked with eating a strange meal. Now, this one doesn't sound too bad until you hear of rumours that say this free grub often contains human flesh or other unidentified horrifying components. Reacting badly or refusing will result in death. The hut may also force visions of past guilt, loved ones in peril, or disturbing nightmares. And these tests help Babayaga measure your will, compassion, and ability to withstand unexpected horrors. It ain't going to be a walk in the park, but success brings magical rewards, vital advice, or safe passage. And yes, I did say or. For all your trouble, you only get to choose one. As well as a taskmaster, Babayaga possesses extraordinary nasal perception, or ENP for short. This ENP allows her to identify visitors by scent alone, even discerning their country of origin. Maybe it's your cologne, or maybe she can smell your jeans. Oh, and wait till you hear this. If you weren't already captured by her frying kids and demented riddles, Babayaga has quite the unique method of travel. She ain't always sat in her hut as it trundles about. Sometimes she needs something with a little more speed. And that's when she heads to the skies, soaring around in a massive wooden mortar. And steering the beast with the pestle, of course, while sweeping away any tracks she's left with a broom. Talk about stealth. In some versions, she swaps the pestle and mortar for an iron kettle. Couldn't find out how she steers that one, mind. In either vessel, her flight is said to create violent tempests in her wake. And the pestle, by the way, that doubled as a weapon. So prepare yourself for that. Probably still better than a great big iron kettle ramming into you. And speaking of her hut, let's head back there for a second. The Izbushka na Kirk Nozkak, or Hut and Chicken Legs, is arguably as famous as the owner. The hut's alive and impressively obedient, able to walk, spin, or flee from intruders without direct command. If you encounter the hut, you'll likely notice it turns its back to you till you utter the correct passphrase. Now here's where you gain entry. And I've also got some good news. I managed to find a few of these commands. But bad news, I couldn't say which is the working one. So here's your options. Hut, hut. Turn your back to the forest and your front to me. Hut on chicken legs. Turn to me your face, and to the forest your back. Stand still, little hut. Let me enter. And in some versions, you must knock 3 times before you recite the command. So make sure you got note of those. And a fair bit of warning here. Failure to give the correct command will result in the hut denying entry and walking off. If you're lucky. If you've caught the hut on a bad day, folks say they're known to attack, try stomping you to death, or lure you deeper into the forest before legging it, leaving you hopelessly lost. If you get the combo correct and find your way inside, then it's also a pretty bad experience, as escape is nearly impossible without Babayaga's consent or aid of a magical item or creature. Once the door's locked, you're stuffed. You could try to blow the bloody doors off. It's only wood, bone and human skin after all. But in this form, they're said to be indestructible. So good luck with that. You're going to need an almighty bang. And Babayaga's domain extends beyond that hut, and even her own powers. She's known to command 3 mystical riders. The White Rider, Red Rider, and Black Rider. Each one personifying a unique state and rotation. Dawn, noon, and night. They only appear at their respective times of day, mounted on horses and clad in garments matching their title colour. They're not hostile. They serve as timekeepers and messengers for Babayaga, often as signals for her trials, warning that you're reaching the near last sands of day. So you better finish that questionably chunky soup, and quick. She refers to them as my bright dawn, my red sun, and my dark night. No, not that dark night. Lastly, and to end here on a short point, turns out Babayaga is sometimes depicted as accompanying death on their travels. Do with that what you will. Babayaga is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful creatures I think we've spoken of here in the tavern. Not only that, but she's got a garage of sick rides, and she's mates with death. I bet you think you're scuppered with this one. Well, not while you've got me on your side, as I've managed to cobble together a good few tips and tricks to help you should you come face to foul with this legend. One story I managed to uncover speaks of a horn that summons the firebird from Slavic folklore, and I'd strongly suggest you find it before embarking on your journey. In this tale, a man possessing the horn blows it to summon the firebird while inside the witch's hut. The firebird tells the man, named Ivan, to hop on its back or Babayaga will eat him. Ivan does so, and Babayaga rushes him and grabs the firebird by its tail. The firebird manages to leave with Ivan, leaving Babayaga behind with nothing but a fistful of firebird feathers. So if you need a quick escape, make sure you've got that horn. Or for something a little simpler, just show a little respect, and you're likely to survive. Maybe. And these tales weren't very common, but there was at least one of an adventurer who managed to play Babayaga at her own game. So if you're cunning enough, you might be able to turn the tables. Oh, how the turntables. And with that, we're finished with our creature for the day. We've learned that having a night for each phase of the day is definitely the coolest method of timekeeping. Now that bell means it's last call here at Creature Tavern. So grab yourself one more drink for the road. And until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird. Adventurer, you've come at just the worst time. Aye, all me taps are out. All except one, of course. Me tap of tails. Here, take a sitting utensil, and I'll pour you a mega pint of lore on the Kludde from Dutch and Belgian folklore. The Kludde is known by many names. The Kleur, the Clare, or Water Kludde. And its appearances are just as varied. I've spent many nights listening to patrons and adventurers share their encounters, each more bizarre than the last. Some swear it's a demonic waterhound. Others insist it's a shape-shifting demon, capable of taking countless forms. One woman painted a curious image of a man, wreathed in dog skin, while a grizzled-looking wanderer swore on his mother's soul that he'd seen the Kludde as a bearded man with a great fishtail. Still, others have described it as a man with goat hooves, or a twisted figure with the head of a dog. Some claim it carries two eerie blue flames that hover around its head. Whether as spectral eyes or a mere decoration, no one can say. And of course, there are those who dismiss all speculation and simply call it what they believe to be a werewolf, or perhaps the devil himself. But after following every lead and piecing together the most persistent accounts, one description stands out above all. The Kludde is called a tormentor, and the form it seems to favour is that of a monstrous black wolf, towering upright on its hind legs, with bat-like wings sprouting out its back, and clad in glistening green scales. And if that alone isn't warning enough, listen for the sound of a rattling chain, usually dragging from its left ankle. But by the time you hear that, the Kludde will have already marked you as its next victim. Now if you thought the appearance of the Kludde was wild, dear adventurer, wait till you hear of its origins. These stretch back deep into the 18th century. The legends speak of a decaying cottage that stood in the forests just outside the small village of Ternat. No one could tell me where the cottage came from, or how long it had stood. Only that a witch, as ghastly as the devil, resided within. The villagers knew the witch consulted with dark spirits, often inviting the damned in, and unsurprisingly, they weren't the biggest fans of this. So the villagers banded together to discuss ways they could remove the witch before the evil leaked out and into the surrounding village streets. But this didn't go exactly to plan, as every single one of the villagers were too scared to act, afraid they'd end up joining the damned souls within this little, timeless cottage. But as luck would have it, a storm like no other began to roll over the land, consuming the village and surrounding forests, and in the swirling chaos, a stray bolt of lightning struck the cottage, burning it and all its inhabitants to the ground. For the longest time, no villager dared disturb the charred remains, for fear dark magic had leaked into the earth. Till one day, a landowner, as foolish as he was wealthy, sent workers over to clear the land. And as soon as the very first shovel grazed the witch's corpse, the ground shook and the sky roared. The burned corpse violently cracked open and a small, ash-covered man climbed out. Within moments, accounts of that day say he grew to an unnatural height. His body contorted and his screams mutated into growls. His face lengthened into a wolf's snout. His legs snapped back and bent into that of a dog's, and claws jutted out from his hands and feet. The Kludde was born. How's that for an origin story? If you're still with me, adventurer, I have a little more on this weird little ash baby, like how the Kludde enjoys haunting lonely places, specifically hollow trees or the shadows under bridges. It's most often found in the Scheldt region, like Dendermonde, where it lives in the Dender, Antwerp and the Zenner marshes. The villagers of East Flanders and Flemish Brabant whisper of its presence in their forests and fields. Locals, they tell me, the Kludde prowls roads that cut through abandoned farmlands, like those between Dilbeek, Zemst, and Zemstlaar, and it's said to be especially treacherous in the municipality of Wikluden. There exists a path named Kludde Pad, a reminder of the beast's long-standing presence in this region, and these people know better than to walk certain paths alone. Even in the areas around Antwerp, such as Heemixem and Skelle, there are rumours of the Kludde. The beast does not confine itself to land alone. Many residents say it's bound to water, emerging from the depths only to satisfy its dark desires. So beware, adventurer, as the Kludde's drawn to isolated roads and those who walk them alone. Whether in the depths of Dendra or hidden in the marshes of Zemst, the Kludde is always watching, in one form or another. So after all that, I bet you're thinking the Kludde's some evil, deadly predator. It certainly gives the impression. But it turns out, the shape-shifting monster dog, its motivations often seem to be driven by an inherent desire to have a laugh at your expense. So the Kludde is a trickster, a master of deception, and a creature of many faces. I did my best to track down every account I could, just for you, adventurer, and here's the full list of what this thing can become. Human, cat, bird, wolf, horse, malnourished horse, snake, frog, bat, sheep, a white-haired dog, a red-haired dog, rabbit, pig, woman, and believe it or not, tree. And if that wasn't enough, some old scrolls even claim the Kludde can command the wind and control water. Talk about overachiever. So what kind of mischief does it get up to? Just the other day, a fella stormed in here, dripping wet and cursing the Kludde to the depths of hell. Said he was out adventuring, when he came across a strangely well-kept horse. Swore up and down that the horse invited him to ride. And well, what would you do if a polite horse offered you a lift? He hopped on, of course. Next thing he knew, the horse had took off like a bat out of the underworld, galloped straight to a lake, and flung him headfast into the water. As he bobbed about, gasping for air, he swears he saw that horse roll over onto its back, kicking its legs in the air and howling with laughter. But by the time he dragged himself ashore, he had gone. Completely vanished. And that's just one trick in the Kludde's book. Ever hear of a tree growing so tall its branches disappear into the clouds? Well, more than a few wanderers claim they have. Watch the tiny sapling shoot up in seconds, stretched impossibly high. Then from somewhere above the clouds, they always hear it. Laughter. The Kludde, no doubt watching them gawk. And it could just as easily have been a stray cat before that, one with big, pitiful eyes that make you want to scoop it up, only for it to explode into a monstrous size, right in your arms. And you see that farmer over there? Aye, the one nursing his ale in the corner. He'll tell you about this bird. Great ugly thing. Kept flying over his farm every night at exactly 2 a.m. Screeching its own name. Kludde, Kludde, Kludde. Until every last beast in the barn was spooked out its wits. Seems the Kludde likes being known. It wants you to know it's there. It wants a laugh. And always, always, at someone else's expense. But its most famous game? That'd be the piggyback ride. If you ever find yourself walking alone at night, especially after a few drinks, and you hear the sound of chains rattling behind you, you better bolt. Not that it'll help much. No matter how fast you go, the chains will always keep pace, dragging just behind you. And the moment you turn to look, bam! The Kludde's on your back. Not attacking you, not clawing, just clinging. And it won't let go. It'll stay there, wrapped around you, growing heavier and heavier until the first rays of dawn break, or you cross the threshold of your home. Then just like that, it vanishes. That's of course unless you're in Breendonk. There, the game has a deadlier twist. As the Kludde sits there on your back, growing heavier and heavier, it'll begin pressing down with an unnatural weight until you're crushed dead. So if you're planning a trip through Breendonk, best keep your wits about you. And the Kludde's pranks don't end there. You could fall victim without even coming into contact with the beast. I found many tomes that speak of a curious ability Kluddes have. Apparently, simply being in the presence of a Kludde can cause milk and butter to turn rancid. I couldn't find much to say if this extends to other dairy products, so I'd appreciate it if you take this yogurt out with you, should you go in search of a Kludde adventurer. And you know what? You can even keep it. Should it turn foul, of course. Their presence is also capable of making cows and horses infertile. Just please don't ask me how I found this one out. Most folk, they'll tell you the Kludde is just a prankster. A menace that enjoys scaring drunks and laughing at their screams. But not everyone agrees. A few stories paint it as something far, far darker. There's talk of Kluddes that have slaughtered entire stables of horses in the dead of night. And worse still, tales of lone women walking through the forests only to be taken and never seen again. But you know what's truly sinister? The way it breaks a person's mind. You see, the Kludde has a talent, perhaps its most dangerous of all. It can choose a target and make itself invisible to everyone but them. Imagine that. You're out with your friends when suddenly, there it is, following you, stalking you. Never attacking, never too close, just watching from a distance. Day and night. When you scream for help, when you beg your friends to tell you they can see it too, the Kludde just laughs. That deep, mocking laugh that only you can hear. and it won't stop. Not until you've lost every shred of sanity you had left. And then, when you've finally snapped, when you're rocking back and forth, eyes wild, muttering to yourself, it'll simply disappear with a final chuckle on the wind. Now, losing your marbles is bad, but not as bad as another record I found. There was this old journal I dug up, brittle dust-covered thing, that told of a few unlucky folks who actually managed to pin a Kludde against a wall. Unsurprisingly, the Kludde didn't seem to care at all. It just perked up its eyes, began to stare down the man restraining him, and shot fire from its eyes, obviously immediately killing the man. Now I'm sure an adventurer as brave as yourself isn't scared off by all that, so if you take me up on my little dairy experiment, here's what you'll need to know in order to avoid being the butt of one of the Kludde's jokes. If you're out on a walk and you hear that unmistakable metal jingle, just keep walking, as the faster you run, the faster the Kludde will chase you. Its inhuman speed and stamina make it the best long distance runner, and typically the Kludde prefers the night. I suppose it's easier to prank under the cover of night, so keep that in your back pocket, adventurer. Use the daylight. This one pops up a lot when dealing with the supernatural, and it's no different for the Kludde. I guess when you spawn from the corpse of a devil-dealing witch, you're bound to have a bad relationship with the gods. So bring holy water, and don't be afraid to pray. I can't say this will definitely work, but it probably won't make things worse. And don't bother trying to restrain the creature. If the story of the man with charred holes for eyes wasn't enough, every other record I found of people trying to capture this beast said it was like trying to grab smoke. Smoke so hot it scorched the flesh from their hands. So please, adventurer, don't try to capture it. Don't try to hug this beast. You're only going to hurt yourself. If you're returning from an adventure and your home's in sight, then I disregard what I said earlier and run immediately. Once you're across the threshold, you'll be safe. The Kludde, much like the common vampire, cannot cross this barrier. If it tries, poof, it'll turn into smoke. And here's a twofer. I had a lovely lady from Weekland stop by. She told me of the time a Kludde hopped on her back, and in an attempt to shake the creature off, she ended up shoving a cloth in its mouth. That failed, obviously, but the following morning, she noticed a man with the same cloth fibres hanging from his teeth. This allowed her, and some other villagers, to deal with the Kludde in its far less threatening human form. But if you don't fancy sticking your hands in a giant wolf mouth, you could simply throw your handkerchief in the air. This will cause the Kludde to hop off you immediately, as it's compelled to rip the fabric apart, fibre by fibre, and it might just afford you those few key moments to get home. And it never hurts to have a little silver, and if it doesn't work on the Kludde, maybe spend it at your local tavern. And with that, we're finished with our creature for the day. We've learned to never leave home without a hanky, lest you end up pancake for a wolf. Now that bell means it's last call here at Creature Tavern, so grab yourself one more drink for the road, and until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird. Adventurer, quick, get in from the rain. It's not raining. Then why are you wet? You know what? Never mind. But you might want to dry off before I chill your bones with the story of today's creature, the Wendigo, from Algonquian Folklore. The Wendigo, also spelled Windigo or Windago, is a fearsome figure from Algonquin Folklore, feared across North America. Known as a creature of terror or evil spirit, the Wendigo is a malevolent, cannibalistic, supernatural being, often called a winter cannibal monster. One translation of the name titles the beast Evil That Devours, giving a pretty good glimpse into what the Wendigo symbolises: greed, selfishness, and an insatiable, all-consuming hunger. The most widely told path to transformation is easier than you might think. Usually, it's a human facing starvation during a brutal winter, left with no other option but to commit the ultimate taboo and consume human flesh. This act poisons the soul, warping the body into that of a Wendigo. In other accounts, the creature is an evil spirit that takes root within those who exhibit greed, selfishness, or cannibalistic intent. And in others, the change can come without a single bite of man meat. Here, an excessive hunger for power, or even prolonged exposure to a Wendigo's presence, can be enough to trigger the metamorphosis. Its legend comes from the traditions of the Ojibwe, Saltu, Cree, Naskapi, and Innu peoples, with the creature's earliest known written mentions dating back to 1636, in a report from French missionary Paul Lejeune. In this account, a woman of the Algonquian people warned of an Atchen. Atchen here is believed to be a French transcribed form of an Algonquian word for Wendigo. The Atchen had devoured some tribal members and would eat a great many more of them if he were not called elsewhere. The Wendigo holds deep-rooted ties to the north, winter, cold, famine, and starvation, as these were the harsh conditions in which its origins took shape. And fun fact, the creature's name is used by psychiatrists to describe a form of psychosis aptly named Wendigo psychosis. It's a disorder marked by an intense craving for human flesh and is linked to a sense of impending doom. But what does the Wendigo look like? I'm sure you've already got an image in your head, but when I was doing my research, it seems the Wendigo comes with two faces. We've got the human Wendigo. This one retains the outline of the person, but they've grown thin, spindly, and unnaturally tall. Some say the very image of starvation. A fella named Basil H. Johnson, an Ojibwe teacher and scholar from Ontario, provides one of the most detailed descriptions of this classic Wendigo. He says, "The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation. Its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin. Its complexion, the ash grey of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton, recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, unclean, and suffering from separation of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odour of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption." The other face being the deer-skulled Wendigo, perhaps the more recognisable build. Described as a gaunt, towering humanoid, said to stand anywhere from 8 to 13 feet tall. Its head is the skull of a stag, mounted atop a skeletal neck, and crowned with what folks tell me are massive, asymmetrical antlers, stretching 1 to 2 meters across. Unlike the antlers of living deer, these never seem to shed. The posture is often hunched, its skin corpse pale or ash grey, and stretched tight over its frame. The eye sockets are empty of all, except for a faint glow of ghostly light that's red, yellow, or white, depending on who you ask. And in stark contrast to the herbivore animal whose skull it wears, the Wendigo's jaws bristle with carnivorous teeth, like jagged molars, and elongated canines, clearly built for tearing at flesh. The Wendigo's arms of both are grotesquely long, and ending in claws, or in some descriptions, these claws are actually just the exposed finger bones, chipped and shaved to a point after countless hunts. The legs, however, are unique to each form. For the classic type, they are very much human, if a little grey and gaunt. And on the deer, they're bent backwards, much like the hind legs of a living deer. This setup allows the Wendigo to both sprint on all fours or stalk its prey upright, should it decide to take things a little slow. Legends place Wendigo in remote, cold regions far from human settlements, where survival really ain't the easiest. Associating them with the forests of eastern Canada, the Great Lakes region, and the Great Plains of the US and Canada. And if you're looking for the best time to find one, they're said to be especially frequent during the winter months. This is likely when people will starve and turn to cannibalism, likely resulting in the appearance of new Wendigo every time the seasons run deathly cold. Now, from those descriptions, it's pretty obvious that the Wendigo resembles that of a beast, but they are something far more complex. They appear monstrous, yes, but they retain all the human capacities of thought, planning, reasoning, and speech. And these retained traits make it quite the intelligent predator. One that's said to even threaten or taunt its prospective victims. I've even had accounts of them using tools to aid them in their hunt. The approach of a Wendigo is not always seen as well, but there will be signs. A foul stench, or a sudden unseasonable chill. Some claim that even speaking its name can summon one. And I guess we're testing that theory out today. And we shouldn't have to wait long. If a Wendigo fancies, it can easily close in on a target with supernatural speed. Or maybe it'll stalk around the tavern with absolute silence. Or even employ its most unnerving ability, where it can mimic the voice of others, in an effort to lure us out alone and deeper into the wide open wilderness. Next time you hear a familiar voice in the hours of night, someone you know, but maybe weren't expecting, you best peek out your window, lest you end up dinner for the beast with an endless hunger. Physically, the Wendigo is rather formidable. Folks who've set eyes on one in action describe exceptionally sharp eyesight, the ability to detect the faintest heartbeat or wisp of breath, a keen sense of smell, and strength that dwarfs that of any human. The deer-skulled variants are also said to have unnaturally long strides, with tracks reported up to 15 feet apart, allowing them to cover impressive ground in moments. And regardless of what version you encounter, it's said they can sprint at around 25 to 30 miles per hour for long stretches. To put that into perspective, the current world record for human speed averages out at about 23 miles per hour. And that's for only 100 meters. And when not on the run, it's said Wendigo can endure walking for long periods of time. Some even call them the tireless travellers, capable of enduring long treks in the most punishing of winters, moving with ease through deep snow and across ice. But the defining curse, feature, whatever you want to call it, of a Wendigo, is that ravenous hunger. And it's said whenever it consumes, it grows in proportion to its meal, which in turn deepens its hunger. The larger it becomes, the more ravenous it grows, creating a vicious cycle of endless consumption. And because of this habit, many unexplained disappearances in the frozen north were blamed on these relentless hunters. Even heard from a few folks that say as long as a Wendigo consumes flesh, they can't die. essentially making them immortal. Whether one chooses to rush you down, shadow your step for days, or draw you in with a stolen voice. All these talents combined truly make the Wendigo the Swiss Army knife of cryptids. So what can you do against this terrifying multi-tool? Well, it turns out there's actually quite ways to survive and avoid encounters entirely. Let's begin with a tale of the kidnapped child. The tale speaks of an Indian child stolen by a Wendigo. But because the boy was too thin, the Wendigo didn't eat him right away. Instead, he travelled with the child, waiting for it to fatten up. He periodically cut the child's hand with a knife to check if it was fat enough, but he never seemed to get there. One day, the pair came across an Indian village, so the Wendigo sent the boy in for food to finally fatten him up. Seems the boy was a smart one though, as he told the villagers about the Wendigo sat at their border, and he showed them the cut on his hand as proof. The Wendigo, seemingly concerned with how long the boy was taking, started calling to him, saying hurry up, and don't tell lies. Now if any villagers didn't believe the boy, they certainly did now, as the Wendigo wasn't exactly whispering these calls. So the villagers banded together, followed the boy over, and cut the Wendigo's legs off, before heading back to their homes with the child. After a while, they returned to check if the creature was dead, but instead they found it sucking the marrow from his own legs. Deciding this wasn't a good enough fate for the Wendigo, the villagers cut him into pieces, finally ending his eternal hunger. From this story we can see a couple of ways in which to survive and handle an encounter with a Wendigo. For one, if you're on the thinner side, you'll get to go on a buddy adventure across the realm with the Wendigo. You're definitely a hostage here, and you've got to be careful not to be on this road trip for too long, but with a little luck and wit, you can escape with just a scarred hand. It also seems Wendigos can be distracted with their own limbs, but considering how emaciated they are, you're likely going to have to slice the limb clean off, like in the story. And it seems they can die. If you've got enough bodies, and the creature's distracted with some other food, you can get in there and slice them up. But as with many myths, different folk say different things. There are some legends that say the only true way to kill a Wendigo is by burning one. And these legends are sometimes more specific, saying you in fact need to cut the heart out and burn that directly. And while the story from earlier gave no detail on the weapons used, there are some folk that say only a weapon of pure silver or iron is fit for the killing task. Or if you'd like to avoid an encounter entirely, then it's quite simple. Just don't eat people. And stay well away from those who do. Cannibalism is the #1 reason for a rising Wendigo birth rate. And it doesn't hurt to be a little generous from time to time. And with that, we're finished with our creature for the day. We've learned that if you really want to grow up to be big and strong, you gotta swap those veggies for a little human flesh. But that bell means it's last call here at Creature Tavern. So grab yourself one more drink for the road. And until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird